Heroes of Maple. Author's note. There were two small prequels that were released during the lead up to the blockbuster's release. The blockbuster is divided into four acts, along with Act 1.5, which is a bridge between Acts 1 and 2. The first prequel that was released for Heroes of Maple was Act 0, Freud, The Lost Record. It was a short animation that Nexon commissioned from a webtoon artist. While the animation was never adapted into English, the summary is that after the Black Mage was sealed, Brood divined the future with the last remaining shamanesses of Aswan and created a prophecy. As the final battle approaches, the unshackled wolf will devour the world tree. Brood believed that the other heroes would be able to stop the impending threat, and so he decided to leave the future in their hands. He was also certain that his successor would be stronger than him, and so he decided to seek out the sanctum of Abraxas in order to help them. Along with this animated short, there was also a second prequel released during the blockbuster in the form of an event called Dark Decree. The event starts out with Nineheart calling us to a rev, where he explains that the Alliance has intercepted some messages from the demons of Tynerum. He tells us that the demons have been dormant for so long that it worries him that they're starting to resurface. After helping him decipher the first message, we learn that the demons are planning to attack LOL in order to keep Mercedes distracted from what they're really doing. Because of our warning, Mercedes and Danica intercept and defeat the demons near Alinea. Since the demons don't know exactly where LOL is, Mercedes notes that the demons were trained warriors and fears that something bad is about to happen. The next message reveals that the demons are planning to trick Iran, whom they call a simple meathead, in their letter, by leaving behind an ancient grindstone and setting up a trap. For some reason, GMS also uses male pronouns to refer to Iran in this letter, which is a bit ridiculous at this point when Iran is literally being established as a female character in this blockbuster. But regardless, thanks to our warning, Iran is able to avoid their trap and defeats them, and she makes it clear that she's annoyed about being called a meathead. The third message reveals that the demons have become aware of Phantom and his skills, and so they will set a trap for him by making up a story about the rare death jewel of Nihal Desert. Even though we warn him, Phantom is already aware that it's a trap because there's no jewel in the world that he doesn't know about. After he defeats the demons, he tells Gaston that he only took the bait because he wanted to know why the demons wanted to lure him out. His information network then deduced that based on their other attacks, the demons are after the heroes. The fourth message reveals that the demons are planning to attack Lania as they realize that she's close to Luminous. Because of our warning, Luminous is able to put up an illusion around Lania's house to protect her. However, he realizes that the demons might not be after the heroes, and that it's possible that the heroes are just an obstacle between them and their real goal. The fifth message reveals that the demons are after Evan and Myrrh, as they've sensed the power of the Onyx Dragons in Hennesis. Evan rushes home to his farm, only to find that the demons got caught in the wolf traps that Utah left behind. Utah, who doesn't know that the soldiers are demons, tells Evan that the demons' faces are so pale that they almost look blue. Because of this, he mistakenly believes that they're starving, and so he decides that he'll give them a stern talking to about trespassing before giving them some eggs and potatoes. He then begins lecturing the demons and asks them if they even understand how much effort goes into making these eggs and potatoes, to which the demons beg him to stop talking, as this is the 178th time that he's repeated the same line. They believe that Utah is a master interrogator and started begging for mercy. Meanwhile, Evan realizes that the demons have reached his home, and something bad must be happening. Oh, if they have reached his home. The sixth message reveals that the demons have become aware of Shade. Though they don't know who he is, they do know that he is someone with significant powers that's on par with the heroes, as well as the fact that he trains in Mulong. The message orders the demons to meet Shade in Mulong and persuade him to join, and to destroy him if he refuses. Neidhart is surprised because he realizes that the demons were expanding their focus to people outside the heroes and wonders whether they were just after powerful people rather than the heroes themselves. In Mulong, Shade defeats the demons and wonders whether their appearance is an opportunity for him to be able to finally reunite with his friends. However, he then berates himself for dreaming of a reunion when the world is being threatened and calls himself selfish. Nevertheless, he can't help but think to himself that he misses his friends very much. The seventh and final message reveals that the demons had been ordered to go to a specific area in southern Livre, which the Great One had said is where everything had begun. The message then orders them to secure the location because the Great One will be visiting it soon. Neidhart immediately realizes the significance of the location, after which the demon contacts him and requests that he be able to handle the matter personally, as the location marked in the letter is his old family home. The demon then returns to his ruined family home and sees that there are signs that somebody has already come and gone. He then wonders who else would come to this home. Who else would come there when this home is only significant to him? He decides that he'll come back to visit again because he has a bad feeling about it, unaware that Damien is secretly watching him in the distance. The demon later does return back to his family home during Act 1.5, where he also reunites with Damien. Through his connection with Afrien, Mur felt that something was wrong on Turtle Island. Evan and Mur went to investigate, where they found Damien's demon army in the area. As they snuck past the demons and headed to Afrien's cave, they fought past Murukins with Damien's curse mark on their foreheads. Author's note: Murukins are monsters native to Rien, which Iran fights during her tutorial. They continued to push forward and soon encountered a penguin named Pushki being attacked by the Murukins. Author's note: Pushki was first seen in the Rihanna Strait theme dungeon, where we encounter him at Ice Station 1. All these references to Rien hint that Turtle Island being hint to Turtle Island being somewhere nearby, which is funny when you consider that the trip to Rien is 30 seconds, while the trip to Turtle Island is 15 minutes. After being rescued, Pushki explained that the demons of Tiny Room had swept in and quickly conquered Rien. He told them that he had managed to escape and that he had learned that the demons had come to Turtle Island for Afrien. Evan asked if the demons had taken any other prisoners, to which Pushki replied that they had captured Lilin and several other penguins. After telling Pushki to head for safety, Evan and Mur pressed onwards and scaled a large cliff, where they found a cave at the top. Looking down from the precipice, they were shocked to find an entire encampment of demons below. The two then entered the cave and found several baby spiders crawling across the ground. Upon hearing a noise, they looked up and saw a large mother spider which began to attack them. As they fought, Evan noticed that the spider bore the same mark of corruption as the Rurikins. Suddenly, the spider smashed down from the ceiling, causing the ice floor to break. Evan fell several levels below, and in the process, he was inadvertently separated from Mur. Though he wasn't used to solving problems without Mur, Evan realized that he needed to learn to be more independent and pressed forward until he reached a large wall blocking his path. As he struggled to determine the best way to move forward, Aran and Shade unexpectedly arrived and greeted Evan. Author's note: later on, during some dialogue that pops up in yellow boxes while we fight past the demon soldiers, we learn that Aran and Shade met during Black Heaven and became sparring partners. I'm convinced that Aran and Shade are secretly dating because it just feels too perfect for the guy who no one remembers to not be dating the girl who remembers no one. I'm also convinced that Shade had a thing for Freud, and since he's clearly not over him, I can imagine how awkward date nights might be. Shade, so what do you like to do? Aran, I love trading and fighting the Black Mage. Shade, oh, Freud used to love fighting the Black Mage. Aran, oh, beat, what about you? Shade, I like stargazing. Freud used to love stargazing too. Aron. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Aron drinks water. Shade. Freud used to drink water. Aron, okay, check please. Aron used her polearm to smash through the ice wall, allowing the three to push forward. They soon encountered a demon officer, ordering his troops to throw Lilith and the captured penguins off the edge of the cliff. Aron and Shade quickly dispatched the demons and freed the hostages. Just then, Mur found the group and told them that he had overheard some soldiers talking about how they had captured Afrien in order to corrupt them. With Lilith and the penguins headed for safety, Evan and Mur led Shade and Aron towards Afrien by fighting their way through the demon soldiers. As they got closer to Afrien, the large mother spider reappeared and began attacking them. With their combined teamwork, the heroes were able to defeat it. Suddenly, its children crawled forward to defend their mother. Though Aron believed that they ought to kill the baby spiders, Shade believed that there was no need. Author's note: Evan has to tiebreak, and you get to choose to either spare them or kill them, neither of which affects the story or gives any extra dialogue. After dealing with the spiders, they continued onward and found Afrien trapped in a nest of icicles and corrupted by Damien's mark. Afrien greeted them, and though Aron pointed out that the mark would soon kill him, he assured them that he would end things on his own terms. He then told Evan that he needed to share a memory that he had originally planned to show when Evan was older, though he added that there was no time to delay any further. Though through Afrien, Evan was able to speak with Freud, who explained that he had placed a small piece of his spirit inside Afrien's mark of the Spirit Pact. He told Evan that he had foreseen that the Black Mage's army would soon consume the World Tree, and that he had prepared something to stop them. Evan asked if he was talking about the Seal Stones, which Freud explained that it was both more important and more dangerous than the Seal Stones, and that only Evan, as his successor, could find it. Freud then transmitted the location of where they needed to go through their mental link. He also told Evan that he could rely on the support of the other heroes to aid him in his quest. After their mental link ended, Afrien explained that he had been holding on for so long in order to ensure that that message was sent, as Freud had told him that it was of the utmost importance. Suddenly, his mark of corruption began glowing as Damien appeared. Damien confronted the heroes and explained that the power of his curse mark was such that he grew stronger as Afrien's corruption grew. Author's note: we encounter Damien's mark of corruption several times in previous storylines, such as Stone Colossus. The mark of corruption allows him to control the beings whom he places it on, as well as to augment his own power with theirs. Given the sheer number of beings with his mark of corruption, you can imagine how powerful Damien has become, similar to how strong Lotus had become with the massive amounts of power that the Blackwings had harvested over the years for him. Shade asked Damien how he could commit such atrocities for power, which Damien told him that it was humans who had taught him that weakness was a sin when they had driven out the demons from their homes. Damien then offered Afrien new vitality in exchange for striking down the heroes, which Afrien immediately refused. Suddenly, he began roaring in pain as the corruption continued to grow deeper. Furious, Aron charged at Damien, who blocked Maha with his sword. As Damien prepared to finish them off, Afrien used the last of his power to sacrifice himself in order to teleport the heroes close to the cave entrance, though the effort ultimately killed him. Fighting through the demon army, the heroes managed to escape the cave, which was collapsing as a result of Afrien releasing his full power. After reaching safety, Evan swore that he would avenge Afrien and carry out Freud's will by stopping the demon army. Aron and Shade promised to come help him after finding a way to fix Maha, which had been branded by Damien's mark of corruption after clashing with Damien's sword. Evan then set off to find Luminous, Mercedes, and Phantom in order to recruit them to his cause. Meanwhile, back at the demon camp, Damien confronted a captured Alicia who told him that he had crossed a line by corrupting Afrien and warned him that the other heroes would be coming for him. However, Damien revealed that he had intentionally provoked them in order to gather all his enemies into one place. In order to track down the other heroes, Nineheart gave Evan a small ship piloted by a guide named Kiriru. Author's note, you can visit the heroes in any order that you want, but I'm ordering them based on how they appear on the list. Evan first traveled to LOL in order to find Mercedes, where the elders asked him to wait until she returned. Mercedes soon arrived with leaves of winter, hoping that it would help the elders lift the Black Mage's curse on the elves. Upon learning that she had guests, Mercedes found Evan and Myrrh waiting for her. Mercedes was surprised to see just how much Evan resembled Freud and told them and took them to the fairy fountain in order to talk, where Evan told her about Freud's message. Though Mercedes sympathized, she told him that it was her responsibility as the ruler of the elves to free her people, and so she needed to prioritize that over anything else. After Evan and Myrrh left, however, she noted that though his speech and mannerisms were completely different, there was still a piece of Freud in him. Ultimately, she decided to help Evan, as she felt that she couldn't stand by and do nothing. Next, Kiriru took them to Megatia, where it was rumored that Phantom was planning to steal the Jewel of Megatia. Author's note, in the Black Heaven post-credit image, you can see that Phantom has gone completely bankrupt as a result of making repairs to the Lumiere, which has sustained heavy damage during the battle. Phantom is probably working overtime to steal as much as he can in order to financially recover from his losses. That night, Evan and Myrrh spotted him atop a roof and chased after him, though Phantom managed to give them the slip. As they continued searching the town, they spotted a man who looked just like Phantom flirting with a woman, and knowing that Phantom was a master of disguise, Evan and Myrrh roast the man with his fire breath. Upon realizing that the man wasn't Phantom, Evan began apologizing profusely. As Myrrh turned away to look somewhere else, Phantom covertly appeared and teleported himself and Evan away atop a tall roof. Phantom scolded Evan for making a scene and almost ruining his plan to steal the Jewel of Megatia. However, Evan told Phantom that they had more important matters to discuss and told him about Faroud's message. Though Phantom appreciated that Evan wanted to carry out Freud's will, he explained that he saw no reason why he himself should get involved. Nevertheless, Evan continued attempting to persuade Phantom before turning back. After a successful heist, however, Phantom ultimately decided to help Evan, as he was curious to see whether Evan was truly Freud's successor or merely a pretender. Finally, Evan traveled to Alydia, where he and Myrrh found Luminous. On their walk back to Lania's house, Evan attempted to persuade Luminous to join his cause, though Luminous plainly refused, claiming that he didn't agree with Faroud's methods. He called Faroud's plan a fantasy, adding that a vague prophecy that assured victory, with the reunion of the heroes without any semblance of a plan, was a fool's errand. He also pointed out that he didn't trust an amateur magician such as Evan to be able to lead the heroes. When Evan protested, Luminous told him that onyx dragons grew with the might and capability of their owners, and pointed out the differences in size between Myrrh and Afrien. Though Evan attempted to argue, Luminous chalked up his argument to merely words. He then lifted the fog around them, revealing a horde of knocked out demons, and told him that for all of Freud's faults, Luminous had still trusted him to know when he was being followed, asking Evan if he had even realized that Luminous's magical trap had been sprung. Though he acknowledged that Evan was a dragon master, he claimed that Evan had no business filling in Freud's shoes before turning him away. Author's note, Lania arrives right as he says this and invites us in. We get the choice to either leave or come inside, though the scene still cuts to the same one no matter what choice we make. While there are some ideas that I really like in Heroes of Maple, the writing for this blockbuster is pretty questionable at best. So many people in this storyline behave out of character, A lot of lore gets needlessly retconned from past storylines, and the writers completely fail to deliver on the themes that they have presented in the story. Some of what I'm talking about can be seen here with Evan. In past storylines, Evan has consistently been said to be a prodigy on the same, if not greater, level of Freud. In the Silent Crusade storyline, if Evan goes back in time and talks to Afrien, Afrien will say that Evan's strength is no less than that of Freud. Evan's original level 200 quest had Afrien recognize that Evan and Myrrh are already stronger than Freud and Afrien were at their age, and that their bond is even stronger than his own bond with Freud. With the Heroes of Maple update, Evan and his levels were retconned and heavily nerfed. His level 200 quest was changed to Evan and Myrrh just having two sentences where they realize that they've become true successors to Freud and Afrien. Him being equal to Freud gets retconned in things like Luminous pointing out Myrrh's smaller size comparison to Evan being magnitudes weaker than Freud. Having the heroes compare Evan to Freud and having Evan being insecure about being unworthy of inheriting Freud's will isn't a problem. But what was the need for the writers to erase Evan's achievements, strengths, just to force the narrative in this blockbuster? Evan feeling like he's not good enough would have worked perfectly fine with him being canonically just as strong as Freud. Imposter syndrome can happen to anyone, even if you're one of the most talented people in the world. There's no good reason why the writers had to specifically go out of their way to tear Evan down by removing references to his strength and investing in inventing proof that he's not good enough to be Freud's successor, though retcons like the size of Onyx dragons being proportional to their master's strength, which wasn't mentioned anywhere in Evan's class story. It's really unfortunate to see Evan go from someone who was meant to be even stronger than Freud to the weakest of the heroes, as the blockbuster puts it. Later that night, Lania found Luminous looking through Freud's research. She asked him whether he disliked Evan, to which Luminous told her that it wasn't that. He begrudgingly admitted that Freud was the only magician whom he could never keep up with, and added that Freud's shoes weren't easily filled. However, Lania merely laughed and told him that she could tell that he had already made up his mind to help. Luminous huffed that he had little interest in dealing with Phantom, though he admitted that he more so just hated having to leave her behind again. Evan and Myrrh soon returned to Arev, where Neinhard told them that the demon army had surprised them by striking at Rien rather than southern Frey, and so he had redistributed the Alliance forces in order to address the threat on the western front in Assyria. He also thanked them for saving his sister, Lilin, and apologized for what had happened to Afrien, adding that they were trying to avoid full-scale war in order to minimize further casualties. He asked Evan where he was planning to travel next, but when Evan told him that it was confidential, Neinhardt coyly mentioned that one should bring sufficient water if they were traveling somewhere hot. At Evan's surprise, Neinhardt explained that he had merely checked which documents Evan had accessed in Arev's library, though he warned that the enemy would be able to discover Evan's plans just as easily as he had. Meanwhile, the demon returned to his burned family home in southern Frey, while tracking down the new commander of the Black Mage. After defeating the demon soldiers, he cornered the commander, claiming that he would unmask him at last. Author's note: the demon storyline has him chase after Damien upon learning that the Black Mage has a new demon commander, though he has no idea that the commander is his brother. This event is the culmination of that plot point. To his surprise and horror, the commander removed his hood and revealed himself as Damien. Damien kept his distance from the demon, feeling ashamed, and explained that his latent powers awakening was the cause of their mother's death, and so he had sworn loyalty to the Black Mage in order to gain the power to make amends for what he had done. Author's note: I've said this before, but it was actually Arcarium who killed his mother, which caused Damien's powers to awaken and destroy the building. Arcarium just tricked Damien into believing that it was all his fault. Damien asked his brother to join him in destroying the humans who had forced them back to Tynerum, as well as to bring their mother back to life. However, the demon instead attempted to persuade Damien to stop his quest for revenge, claiming that it would only destroy him. Damien then told him that their mother's death was as much his own fault as the fate of the half-blood demons was the date as the what? Damien then told him that their mother's death was as much his fault as the fate of the half-blood demon was the demon's. I hate that his name is Demon. He told the demon that all the weak demons who had moved to leave Frey had been exiled back to Tynerum after the Black Mage had been sealed away, all because the demon had been a commander. There, they had all suffered at the hands of the purebloods, as only the strong ruled in Tynerum. However, Damien added that he wasn't weak anymore, and that he would accomplish what the demon never could. The demon tried to convince Damien that their mother's death wasn't his fault, and implored him to see that it wasn't too late. However, Damien told him that it was too late, right before he attacked the demon and knocked him out. As he walked away, he voiced aloud that he had only wanted to see his brother again, and asked the demon not to hate him. Damien then led the demon army to victory by conquering the Rien archipelago, with the Alliance locked in battle to reclaim the fallen land. Meanwhile, Evan and Mur traveled to the Nihal Desert in order to follow Farouk's will. Though Evan waited for the other heroes, he soon became discouraged when nobody came. Mur cheered Evan up by telling him that they could do it alone, which Evan readily agreed to. As they pressed on in the torrid desert, Evan found himself trapped in quicksand and fell deep beneath the sands into a large underground space filled with glowing rocks. Mur flew down to catch up with him and asked if they had found the ruins of Abraxas. He then began wondering what Abraxas even was. Evan explained that in the beginning all things were animate, the stones and the trees, to the rivers and oceans, to the sun and moon. There had once been 365 gods, inhabiting 365 creations, each living in accordance to their own 365 laws. However, the ancient gods had soon begun to quarrel over their domain and laws, ushering in a great age of chaos. To restore order, the world had been reborn under the three laws of light, life, and time. In the new world, the ancient gods had dwindled in power and had ultimately been forgotten, save for Abraxas, the watchful god, who had been tasked with watching the graves of the ancient gods after the creation of the Transcendence. Author's note: in Gnostic practices, Abraxas is considered the supreme deity who rules over the 365 spheres, or heavens. This is likely the inspiration for the 365 ancient gods, as well as Abraxas' significance as the only god permitted to remain awoke or awaken, or remain awake in the era of the Transcendence. Evan's explanation about the era of the ancient gods gets me thinking about the concept of Urdas and how they relate to all things being animate, and based on that, I came up with a theory to explain these properties. From what we know about Urda, they're the basic building blocks of reality, existing as pure, formless power that makes up both living and non-living matter. Based on how we've seen Urdas and their relationships to memories in the Arcane River, I'd hypothesize that they're somewhat similar to atoms. Urda is comprised of energy surrounding a nucleus. This nucleus would likely contain a trace of memory, which defines the properties of what Urda is meant to be, such as a rock, a tree, or a person. The nucleus would retain knowledge about itself in its current life cycle, and as Urda undergo a constant cycle of creation and destruction, which recycles them into new forms of matter. The nucleus would add more traces of memories of its new forms, creating a sort of chain of memories about all the different forms that it had had. In the era of the ancient gods, it was said that all things were animate, including non-living matter, such as stones and water. This could this could be because the Urdas, which retained traces of their old memories, eventually began oversaturating. As a result, the Urdas would start to behave not only as what they currently are, but also as what they've once been. Non-living matter would start taking on the properties of its component Urda's old forms that were once animate. This disordered amalgamation of sentient matter might even be part of the primordial chaos that the overseers sought to correct. After the Transcendents were created, we know from the Temple of Time questline that the goddess's promise was created by Rhine, and potentially all other transcendents of time. The goddess's promise gifted people with oblivion, the power to forget. Broadening this principle, we can describe oblivion as a special field that the Urdas pass through during their reincarnation cycles. The goddess's promise would erase the nucleus of the Urdas, leaving them as blank slates at the time that they reincarnate into something new. In this way, Urdas will only ever be able to hold the memories of their current incarnation. This erases the problem of non living matter gaining sentience, and also makes it so that living things can't remember their past lives. One of the few exceptions to this rule that we've seen is Lania, who was reincarnated from Lucia. However, the second Light Master of Aurora told Luminous that the mages of Aurora had artificially reincarnated her with light magic, which is later shown to be a rudimentary form of Urda manipulation, which could explain which could explain why she didn't pass through the field of oblivion. Following the creation of the Transcendents, it was explained that Urdas flow through the world tree during their reincarnation cycle, meaning that the management of the Urda cycle is now relegated to the Transcendent of Life. After Alicia scatters her life force at the end of this storyline, the Black Mage began stealing the Urda from their natural life cycle before using them to create the Arcane River. As a result, the Urda of the Arcane River are free to create new amalgamations spontaneously, such as the fruit animal hybrids of Choo Choo, rather than having their next life cycles be directed by Alicia. Going by this theory, it can also be said that the Urdas themselves embody the laws of life, light, and time. They cycle through creation and destruction, light. They make up all living and non living matter, life, and contain memories of their existence, time. This could also be used to explain why the Overseers chose those three laws over all others to govern the universe, though things like through things like the goddess's promise. Additionally, memory and matter being intrinsically linked also gives more symbolic significance to the theme of losing and regaining memories that many characters exhibit. Evan and Myrrh soon continued onward and encountered several spirits of the ruins, which they defeated before pressing ahead. After arriving at the entrance to the sanctum of Abraxas, they discovered that the door would neither open nor break. Suddenly, a large golem manifested and began attacking them for intruding upon the ruins. Upon finding that their attacks did nothing, Myrrh believed that it was under some sort of spell. The golems, whose name was Kappas, then told them that he was immortal and that he had been tasked ages ago by Aswan, the Lost King, to guard the sanctum, which he continued to do after the kingdom of Aswan had fallen to ruin. Author's note: his order to guard the sanctum predates the fall of Aswan by a long time. King Aswan was most likely the first ruler of the kingdom, whereas King Jason, the one who had been betrayed by Hilla, was the last king. Just then, Mercedes arrived and began to fight Kappas with Evan and Myrrh. With their combined power, the heroes were able to defeat the golem. As Mercedes attempted to finish him off, Evan stopped her and asked Kappas whether they could instead receive permission to enter the sanctum, just as Freud had. Upon learning that Evan was Freud's successor, Kappas asked a riddle: what is long in the morning, short at noon, and long again at night? Author's note, Mercedes says, I don't think I should say it, proving that even as a queen, her mind lives in the gutter. Evan successfully answers that it was a shadow, allowing them to pass with Capus's blessing. After entering the sanctum, Mercedes snapped at Evan for interfering with her trying to finish Capus off, and told him that she didn't take orders from him. However, when Evan humbly acknowledged her, rather than having his pride hurt, Mercedes gained a newfound respect for him. As they continued on, they were caught in one of the sanctum's traps, as hordes of monsters appeared. Just then, Phantom and Luminous arrived and defeated all the monsters before setting the others free. Phantom had made a wager to see who could defeat the most monsters, and though Luminous had told him that he was uninterested, they quickly got into an argument about who had won. As the two continued bickering, the group made their way deeper into the sanctum, where they found murals engraved on the walls depicting the Transcendence, the fall of the White Mage, the sealing of the Black Mage, and the prophecy of the unshackled wolf devouring the World Tree. Author's note: the mural with the 6 heroes sealing the Black Mage has Shade's image, cracked beyond recognition to the characters, even though it's really easy to distinguish Shade's appearance from a player's perspective. Upon realizing that the ruins far predated the events in the mural, Mercedes realized that the sanctum had been enchanted to record events as they happened. They then continued onward, where they found themselves in yet another trap as sand and treasure filled the entire room. Phantom unhelpfully joked that it was his fault, as he had once wished to be buried in treasure when he was a kid. Evan then remembered Capus's riddle and noticed 2 statues and a carving on the wall. He told Luminous to cast a shadow on the statue, which lined up with the carving. Phantom then copied Luminous's light magic skill to cast a light on the other statue, much to Luminous's annoyance. With both shadows lined up on the carving, several slabs protruded from the wall, allowing them to climb out before the sand and treasure buried them. Author's note: this proves that Phantom can canonically steal any class's skills, even if he can only steal Explorer skills for a game mechanics perspective. They soon arrived at another sealed door, and read that the treasures of Abraxas weren't allowed to leave the area. Luminous immediately blamed Phantom and told him to relinquish the treasures, prompting another argument between them. To their surprise, however, Evan and Myrrh revealed that they were the ones that had pocketed the gold. After they put back the treasure, the door opened, leading to a ravine in the Nihal Desert, where the ancient relic of Abraxas, a large airship called the Eye of Abraxas, awaited them. Suddenly, they heard a rumbling sound and turned to find that the demon army had come after them. As the heroes struggled to defend themselves, Shade and Aran finally arrived and held off the demons, while attempting to activate the relic. While Evan attempted to activate the relic. Though he struggled to do so, Luminous helped Evan by coaching him to quell his self-doubt, allowing him to activate the Eye of Abraxas. With the doors open, the heroes quickly boarded the airship and took off. In the air, the heroes were surprised to find a projection of Freud, who explained that the real Freud had left him as a sort of message in a bottle for them. He then revealed that the other hero that Shade had once been their comrade, and that he had sacrificed his existence in order to enact the seal of time. As Freud's knowledge was only limited to knowing that there had been a sacrifice, with all his specific memories about Shade being erased, he was unable to recall Shade's true name, and so he asked the pirate what to call him, to which he told Freud to call him Shade, explaining that the name had been given to him by a dear friend. The heroes then spent a long time catching up with Freud, before he told them about what they needed to find. He explained that he had learned about an object called the Transcendence Stone, a powerful relic which he had located with the Eye of Abraxas. However, he had been unable to find a way to reach the dimension where it was hidden, and so he had sealed Abraxas's relic, such that only his successor could awaken it. Author's note: although the relics of the ancient gods have no powers, while the transcendents are still around, it makes sense that the Eye of Abraxas would still work, since Abraxas is the only ancient god permitted to be awake. After the trace of Freud vanished, the heroes mourned him before unanimously electing Evan to be their new leader. Meanwhile, Arcaria met with Damien in the Temple of Time, claiming that the Black Mage wanted a progress report. However, Damien called his bluff and told him that the Black Mage had more important things to do than to follow up with him. Annoyed at his insolence, Arcarium conjured Damien's mother, frozen in time, and reminded Damien that he was the only thing keeping her from oblivion. However, Damien merely laughed and replied that he was more in the Black Mage's favor than Arcarium was, as he was the one in possession of the World Tree. Author's note: I wonder which kind of leverage Arcarium even had over Damien at this point. He kept Damien under control all these centuries because he claimed that the Black Mage would convince the new Transcendent of Time to turn back time on his mother's corpse. But since Alpha and Beta have clearly sided with the Alliance as of Black Heaven, I don't know why he expects to be able to keep Damien in his pocket by bringing this up. Damien is also well aware of this fact, as it's the reason why he chose to betray the Black Mage and become the Transcendent of Life himself. At the demon camp on Turtle Island, Alicia continued persuaded Damien to give up his quest for vengeance. She told him that much like Hilla betraying her kingdom and Von Leon selling his soul, there would be a price for Damien in exchange for the Black Mage's power as well. Though she conceded that he grew stronger by absorbing the power of others through his mark of corruption, she also warned that there was a limit to how much his body could handle. Damien simply laughed and told her that she was in no position to be worrying about anyone but herself. Alicia asked if the other commanders knew about his plan, to which Damien told her that he was keeping it from them, especially Arcarium, as they wouldn't simply stand by and watch. Alicia then pointed out that even though Arcarium had betrayed the Transcendent of Time, he had known his limitations as a mortal, and had never tried to absorb her powers. Author's note: the only reason why Arcarium didn't try to do that is likely because the Black Mage was literally standing right next to him, and ready to take it for himself. He had no problems trying to take Tana's Transcendence powers and Morass for himself when the Black Mage wasn't there to stop him. To be fair, though, he had no idea that she was a Transcendent, although I doubt that it would have changed anything, even if he had known. Alicia told him that it still wasn't too late to stop, but Damien simply replied that it wasn't just his fight anymore. He then left to get a progress report from his officers, who told him that they were still at a standoff with the Alliance. The officer also reported that they had lost many elite soldiers, with half of them having fallen at the hands of the heroes, and that he was worried about their supply lines being cut off. Damien reassured him that the war wouldn't last much longer before turning to address his entire army. He reminded them about his promise when he had led all the half-blood demons out of Tynerum, that he would lead them to create a new world to rule. He then told them that he would be personally leading an expedition and ordered them to be ready for battle upon his return. After the battle at the sanctum of Abraxas, there was a temporary halt to the fighting as both sides regrouped. The Alliance quickly moved to fortify their defenses and to protect the displaced civilians. Meanwhile, the heroes came up with a plan to obtain the Transcendence Stones, which Evan had discovered to be on Earth. Though Freud had been unable to pierce through the dimensional barrier centuries ago, the actions of Elwyn and the White Mage of Earth had broken it down, allowing the heroes to travel across dimensions in the airship. Even though they had the advantage of being the only ones who knew about its location, they also realized that it was vital that they succeeded on their first attempt before the demon army learned where the stone was. Evan suggested that they negotiate with the people of Earth, as Grendel had some connections with several of them. However, Shade pointed out that nothing nearly as valuable as the Transcendence Stone to offer in exchange, without being able to take it by force or negotiate. Phantom told them that their only option was to steal it. They discovered that the stone was inside the recently built Cosmic Museum in Seoul, whose opening gala was taking place in a week. Over the next several days, Evan formulated a plan that involved Phantom, Mercedes, and Luminous disguising themselves as party attendees in order to locate and extract the Transcendence Stone. On the night of the gala, Mercedes and Luminous moved into place, while Phantom began conversing with the attendees in order to learn where the Transcendence Stone was. While speaking to them, he learned about the recent sinkhole incident and how everyone had already learned about the existence of a separate world, despite authorities attempting to keep it a secret, as well as the fact that several unique objects were going to be displayed in the museum through the work of Dr. Lim. Dodging through several women who attempted to get his number, Phantom made his way to Mercedes and rescued her from her own flirt. Though Phantom joked that he was mainly acting to save the man before Mercedes shot him with her bowguns in annoyance. Just then, Dr. Lim appeared on the stage and began giving a speech for the museum's inauguration. He explained how he had first proposed the theory of alternate dimensions, which he had which had been proven correct with the sinkhole incident. He explained that he had also theorized that Earth and the other dimension had originally been one world before being split apart by a higher power, with the sinkhole incident indicating that the two worlds were attempting to merge back together. Author's note: while Friend's story and Kinesis' storyline suggest that Maple World and Earth were being merged together, the blockbuster explicitly puts forth the implication that the two worlds used to be one before being split apart by the Overseers, just like what had happened to Maple World and Grandis. Because of this, I think that we can treat Earth being the third world as almost all but canon. With the sponsorship of Director O, Dr. Lim explained how he had traveled the world and found many rare artifacts that he believed had come from the other world. Author's note: Dr. Lim shows several relics from Aswan and the Golden Temple during this part. Something interesting to consider is that many of Maple World and Grandis's different areas, names, aesthetics, and mythologies are directly drawn from different cultures in the real world. Some examples of this are Sleepywood being based on the jungles of Cambodia, the Golden Temple being based on Indian culture, Chongwon having inspiration from Korean folklore, etc. While the out of universe explanation is that they are just creative inspirations, given the fact that Maple World, Grandis, and Earth were originally one, it could explain why Earth's mythologies and cultures have shaped both Maple World and Grandis, as well as why Maple World and Grandis share a common link in the evolution of their races, such as elves and flora being identical apart from their wings, and nymphs and celestials being similar. With the exception of celestials having feathered wings in place of their ears, even the dragons of Grandis evolved into humanoid hybrids, whereas the ones on Maple World remained monsters and instead evolved into different types of dragons, such as wyverns and drakes. When Pathfinder first came out, I thought that having an explorer who actually does exploring and hunts for ancient artifacts was a really cool idea, because it would have been an opportunity for Nexon to delve into the ancient history of Maple World, as well as to explore links between the shared histories of Maple World and Grandis. When I ended up playing her story, I was fairly disappointed that we learned almost next to nothing about Maple World's history, but I'm still hoping that they'll one day circle back to it. Dr. Lim then explained that his greatest discovery was an object that he had named Infiltration, which caused radio waves and magnetic fields to distort in its presence, as well as having its mass change each time it was measured. He concluded that it was an object which defied the laws of physics, and that he had decided to put it on display in the Cosmic Museum for the public. Phantom and Mercedes immediately realized that the object was the Transcendence Stone and decided to make their move. According to the information that the Magician Association had obtained for them, They learned that they needed 2 access cards in order to enter the secured area where the Transcendence Stone was being held. Phantom intuitively felt that Director O and Dr. Lim each had one, as security was always the same, regardless of which world they were in. Evan and Phantom then had Mercedes flirt with Dr. Lim in order to help him, or in order to keep him occupied, while Phantom used his disguise kit to impersonate Dr. Lim. He then approached Director O and asked for his access card so that he could see the Infitasium. Next, he disguised himself as Dr. O and approached Mercedes and Dr. Lim in order to swipe it from Lim's pocket. After Phantom obtained the cards, Evan gave Luminous the all clear to begin the next phase of the plan. In the utility tunnel, Luminous dodged through laser beams and reached the power supply in order to kill the lights. He then rendezvoused with Phantom and Mercedes before they all slipped into the high security room amidst the chaos. However, a woman who had been flirting with Phantom accidentally ran into them. In order to keep her quiet, Mercedes raised her bowguns at the woman, much to Phantom and Luminous's shock. Just then, Dr. Lim arrived and found Mercedes holding the woman at gunpoint. He and the woman immediately ran and called for security, shouting that there were burglars in the museum. Realizing that they had little time, the trio continued onward towards the artifact room. Author's note, there's a Crimson Balrog skeleton on display there as well. It's cool because it shows the actual proportions between our character and the Crimson Balrog, which is about as large as a T-Rex. As they moved closer, Evan told them there was a problem with the signal, the way that the Transcendence Stone interfered with radio waves. Cut off from communications with the Eye of Abraxas, the trio found their way through the security drones and reached the Transcendence Stone as they marveled at its immense aura. Luminous suddenly reacted to the stone and fell unconscious. Upon waking up, he immediately told them that he needed to destroy it, or that they needed to destroy it. He explained that as he had been created from the light cast off from the Black Mage, a piece of the Transcendent of Light's power was tied to his own. He realized that the stone's power was reacting with the Transcendent's power within him, causing the balance of power within himself to shift. He theorized that with the stone, one could control or even destroy a Transcendent's power. Author's note, it's possible that the Transcendent Stone might have been created by the ancient gods as a weapon to use against the Transcendents. The ancient gods were defeated by the adversaries at the end of the Ancient War, after which the Overseers created the Transcendents, whose mere existence forced the gods into dormancy, with the exception of Abraxas. There's a small window of time between the Transcendents being brought into existence and the gods being sealed away, during which the Transcendent Stone could have been created. Most likely, the Transcendent Stone was created by the gods so that their followers could avenge them, as it was said in the Cernium storyline that many of their followers hated the Transcendents for what they had done to the ancient gods. In that case, it would make sense why the Transcendent Stones ended up on Earth and why the Overseers separated it from Mapleworld and Grandis, as Earth is the only known world where magic doesn't naturally exist. Since the Overseers can only interact with the universe through the Transcendence, and since the Transcendent Stone interferes with their powers, it's possible that the Overseers couldn't outright destroy the stone, and so the next logical option would be for them to put it in a place where none of the Ancient God's followers would be able to get it, and to use it against the Transcendence. Mercedes wondered why Freud had been searching for such a dangerous object, which Luminous revealed that he had often had arguments because of the Dragon Master's many radical beliefs. During one such conversation, Freud had told Luminous that he believed that the concept of the Transcendence was unjust, and because of the way that they had monopolized so much power. Luminous had likened it to a king ruling a kingdom, but Freud believed that the world should be governed by the courage and wisdom of everyday people rather than a single entity whose powers could be corrupted, claiming that the day would soon come when people would grow capable of ruling themselves. Author's note, Freud's belief in self governance is the central thesis of this game. Throughout the story, we've seen that all the struggles of humanity are a direct result of higher beings asserting their power over mortals. First, with the ancient gods ruling with impunity, then with the overseers tethering humanity to a fixed destiny that leaves them incapable of rising above their shortcomings, then with transcendence like the Black Mage and Darmor throwing the world out of balance by using mortals as pawns for their own purposes. Free will and destiny are something that we as a species collectively struggle with every day. When we find ourselves in an adverse situation, we're stuck wondering why we're being made to experience it. Whether it could have been avoided if if we had made a different choice, whether what we choose would have even any impact at all, and because we naturally crave simplicity, if we conclude that we're not at fault for what's happening to us, we can't help but simplify the complex system of causality into the idea of our agency being taken away by some single entity, whether that's a person, a higher power, or a force of evil. Anything that we can target with all the feelings of unfairness and anger overflowing in us. I think that the root of this entire debate about fate and free will is finding and coming to terms with the degree of how much control we have over our lives. Sometimes we might cling to the idea of destiny because we need to hope that there's a better future waiting for us. Other times, we'll try our hardest to change ourselves because we refuse to accept that the hardship in our lives are immutable. In both these cases, our concept of free will is always based on which interpretation will allow us to have more agency over our lives. Because human beings are naturally tenacious and predisposed towards carving out their own path, almost every culture believes in the idea that we've been given free will. In particular, many cultures will even incorporate mythology into their belief that free will is a God given right through stories that involve the gods themselves presenting human beings the gift of autonomy. In Greek mythology, for example, Prometheus was a titan responsible for gifting humanity with fire, which gave them the ability to survive on their own without depending on the gods. This idea of humans being given their own means of salvation is echoed in how the overseers gifted mortals with the seal stones, a symbolic representation of free will itself, as it's through the will of the people that the power of the seal stones activate. The seal stones are the greatest demonstration of Freud's beliefs that humans have the capability to govern themselves. In spite of the overseers making humanity unable to break from their own paths towards self destruction, the people of the Maple World were nevertheless able to put their own selfish interests aside and work together, allowing their shared willpower to change destiny itself. The seal stones, originally created with the name Spear of God, having the power to destroy higher beings, represents how the free will of individuals is enough to serve as a weapon that can pierce through the idea of a predetermined fate, demonstrating that people are indeed capable of ruling themselves without the needs of gods, or transcendence, or even kings. I think that by the end of the game, we'll have gotten rid of all of the higher beings in the universe and finally create the perfect world that the White Mage had dreamed of, born from the courage and wisdom of everyday people, just like Freud had believed. The idea of having free will is honestly one of my favorite themes, both in games and most stories in general. Knowing that your life is shaped only through your actions, not by some indomitable higher power, gives the reassurance that you already have everything that you need to change your life. Throughout the story, we watch all the characters rise above their hardships and create a better destiny for themselves, which shows that through our own choices, we have the power to be more than just the sum of all the bad things that have happened to us, and that our lives are ours alone to reshape into something meaningful to us. Luminous believed that it was too dangerous to take the stones to Maple World, but Mercedes argued that it was precisely why they couldn't leave the stone as it was. Phantom then wondered whether Faroud was right about the world being better off without the Transcendence. Luminous argued that the Transcendents were necessary to maintain balance, which Phantom asked if Black Mage was Luminous's idea of balance. Luminous begrudgingly admitted that the Black Mage it was an exception, but Phantom retorted that many people had lost their lives because of that exception, with the world being in danger once again because of their poor excuse for a seal. Luminous snapped at Phantom for insulting their efforts and claimed that Phantom hadn't even helped them in the final battle, as he had gone rogue in order to seek petty revenge. Immediately, he realized that he had crossed a line when Phantom's face went dark at Luminous' insinuation that Arya's death was a petty matter. Luminous retorted that Arya wouldn't have died in the first place if the mages of Aurora had never started their ludicrous research. Mercedes attempted to keep the peace between the two, but tensions had grown high enough that the two began fighting. Author's note: this is another instance of the writers having no idea how to write their characters. This argument between Phantom and Luminous was completely pointless and forced, as though the writers had just decided that they wanted the two of them to fight to give some half-hearted excuse to instigate it. The start of their argument wasn't a problem, but the way that it developed into petty squabbling and a fistfight made absolutely no sense to me. Phantom and Luminous obviously bicker and make petty insults, but not when the fate of the entire world is at stake. We've clearly seen in the past that they know when it's a time to argue and when it's a time to take things seriously. What started out as a well-founded debate about what to do with the Transcendent Stones somehow devolved into a stupid, one-dimensional name-calling for absolutely no reason other than the fact that the writers wanted to create pointless drama because they had it in their heads and wanted it to happen, even if it doesn't make any sense. These people aren't first graders fighting on the playground. They're adults who are more than capable of using their big boy words. How did we go from do we have the right to destroy the transcendence and upend the natural order to nuh-uh, you're useless, you didn't even participate? And the thing that's even stupider is that after Luminous crosses the line by insinuating that Arya's death was a petty matter, he immediately realizes that he was in the wrong, but then he has the audacity to get mad at Phantom for making a perfectly valid point about Aurora being responsible for the Black Mage. Luminous is supposed to be a rational, level-headed man in his 20s or 30s. Anyone with an ounce of maturity would have taken Phantom's retort, especially after accepting that they were in the wrong about it. What exactly was Luminous's justification in getting mad here? He crossed a line. Phantom made a completely valid point. Luminous himself knows just how shady Aurora is after learning that they set Lucia up as a pig for slaughter to be killed in his place. And you're telling me that in spite of all this, he'd somehow get offended enough to start punching Phantom in the face. If they really wanted to fight so badly, at least have it be because of the Transcendent Stone. Luminous himself mentioned that the Transcendent Stone was shifting the balance of power inside of him. Why not have his darkness overtake him and force Phantom and Mercedes to fight him in order to help stabilize himself? It would have at least made his inner darkness have actual significance instead of being a first job problem that never gets mentioned again. Inventing contrived reasons to make characters fight and act and behave out of character is a terrible excuse just for the sake of forcing an idea that's inconsistent with their personalities. Meanwhile, Aron and Evan were waiting aboard the Eye of Abraxas and began discussing Shade's curse, which had prevented him from being able to travel to Earth with them. Just as Evan revealed Just as Evan resolved to find a way to fix Shade's curse, Mur spotted the demon army traveling on flying birds and heading straight for them. Realizing that they were completely surrounded, Aron and Evan made their stand. However, Evan quickly realized that the demons weren't targeting them, but the airship itself. Back in the museum, Mercedes was able to put a stop to Phantom and Luminous's fighting when Damien himself appeared. He revealed that he had branded Maha with his mark of corruption when they had crossed blades on Turtle Island, allowing him to track them as easily as the other creatures that he controlled. He then seized the Transcendent Stone, claiming that he would use it to steal the power of the Transcendence for himself. Though the three used their strongest skills, they were unable to stop Damien from escaping with the stone. Worrying for Evan and Aron, they fought their way through the demons in the museum and made it outside, only to find the airship crashing down. Back at Turtle Island, Arcarium and his minions arrived to confront Damien, believing that he was about to betray the Black Mage with the Transcendent Stone. Arcarium then used his power to freeze Damien in time, explaining that it was a failsafe that he had set up centuries ago. He also revealed that Damien's mother's body was an illusion created to blackmail Damien, claiming that he would never have used his powers to preserve a mere human. He also explained that he himself had killed her, rather than her death resulting from Damien's awakening. As Damien seethed with rage, Arcarium told him that he had only taken Damien in as a tool to break his brother. Though he conceded that Damien had been useful over the past centuries, Arcarium had realized that Damien had outlived his usefulness, and so he had decided to end him, but not before forcing him to reveal where the World Tree was. To his surprise, however, Damien began laughing and revealed that he had already consumed her. He explained that he hadn't taken the Transcendence Stone to destroy the Black Mage, but rather he had, he had used it to become the new Transcendent of Life. With his new powers, Damien effortlessly broke free from Arcarium's binding spell and utterly destroyed him. Author's note: although Damien has access to the powers of the Transcendent of Life, at no point in the story is he an actual Transcendent. All he did was absorb Alicia's power inside the Transcendence Stone, which only allows him to use them as long as he's in possession of the stone. If he were to lose the Transcendence Stone, he would also lose access to Alicia's powers. I mentioned in the last section that there was a possibility that Glimmer could have turned Lotus into an adversary and had him kill the Black Mage. Damien taking the Transcendence Stone is another example of an alternate timeline in which he could have stolen the Black Mage's powers and destroyed him. In Limina, it was revealed by Grendel that Gloom's core contained potential futures that would have led to the Black Mage failing to create a new world, with most of those futures coming about as a result of the commanders themselves interfering with his plans, which we can see through these alternate possibilities for Lotus' life choices. Lotus and Damien actually have quite a number of parallels to each other. Their respective close sibling relationships with Orchid and the demon, the way that Lotus is a spirit with the body of a human, and that Damien is a demon with a fully human body. The way that they amass large quantities of energy via the Black Wings or the Mark of Corruption, and the way that they respectively lost their free will to Glimmer and the Spirit of Vengeance. These similarities highlight how, despite the fact that these two come from very different walks of life, both of them had their destinies altered such that they ended up suffering the exact same fate. Just like how there are alternate timelines in which we could have killed the Black Mage, there were also timelines in which Orchid and Lotus could have lived happily together as spirits if the White Mage had never met them, and how Damien could have lived happily with his family if the Black Mage had never started the war that led to his family being torn apart. The demon being the adversary explores the idea by showing how he and Orchid, the last survivors of these two parallel sibling pairs, work together to defeat the Black Mage and face the spirits of their departed brothers in the Labyrinth of Suffering. It also highlights the narrative of the Black Mage manipulating destiny, destroying every possible outcome in which the demon and Orchid could have been happy, making it so that Damien and Lotus have their individuality and feelings erased. First, by being artificially placed on some life path headed towards their own destruction, and then by being ultimately reduced into stepping stones for sufficiently traumatizing their siblings into playing right into the Black Mage's plan. Back on Earth, Evan managed to crash the airship into a river so that it wouldn't crush anyone on the ground. Though the heroes were dismayed at their failure, Evan urged them to press on and to recover the Transcendent Stone. Shade pointed out that according to the prophecy, Damien had likely already consumed the World Tree and become the Transcendent of Life. However, Evan believed that Damien had absorbed so much power that he had likely become unstable, making it the perfect time for them to strike. He told them that the Transcendent Stone was a double-edged sword, capable of doing terrible things in Damien's hands, and serving as a weapon against the Black Mage in the right ones. As they began preparing to cross over to Maple World, Nineheart mobilized the Alliance to protect the civilians from the demon's army's assault. Suddenly, Claudine arrived and told them that Athena Pierce had reported that all the trees across the world were withering away, as though the life force was being drained from them. Upon arriving at Victoria Islands, they found a fierce storm raging around the withered world tree, prompting Nineheart to summon reinforcements from the neighboring regions. In Hennesis, Athena Pierce oversaw the evacuation of the citizens, including Evan's family. Upon learning that their son was fighting Damien, they grew worried until Athena reassured them that he had become a great hero. Though the people of Hennesis wanted to stay and protect their town, Athena told them that though she appreciated the gesture, it was the Alliance's job to keep them safe. After having returned to Maple World, the six heroes fought their way past the corrupted spirits of the World Tree and scaled atop its poisoned branches. Author's note: in the blockbuster, you can only use Evan and two other heroes for the fourth act because of the limitations of the blockbuster's mechanics. However, I believe that it doesn't make sense for them to leave anyone behind, so I'm assuming that all six of them, plus Myrrh, fight together. On their way, they ran into the demon, who told them that he would bear the responsibility to stop Damien, not only as a fellow demon, but also as his brother. He climbed to the top of the world tree and confronted Damien, who had grown mad with power. In an effort to help Damien see the error of his ways, he told Damien the truth about their father. He explained how the pure blood demons had once conducted terrible experiments to steal the power of the Transcendence, resulting in Tynerum becoming a desolate wasteland. Author's note: just when I thought that we could conclude that Earth is the third world, they had to go and tell us that Tynerum had its own transcendent. If Nexon could do me this one solid, please just fix your lore so I can stop making author's notes about how you should fix your own lore. Because their father had spoken against the plan, he had been banished from Tynerum and exiled until his dying day. He implored Damien to see that the demons had met their own end in their pursuit of power, but Damien suddenly attacked the demon and claimed that he had succeeded where the others had failed. Soon after, the heroes reached the top of the world tree and found the demons severely injured. With no choice but to fight, the heroes engaged in a fierce battle against Damien and his new transcendence powers. They managed to push him back and urged him to surrender, claiming that he and his demon army had already lost. Just then, the monstrous spirit of vengeance emerged from Damien's sword and possessed him, augmenting Damien's power into something even stronger. However, the heroes were able to beat him and force the spirit out of Damien. Evan rushed to grab the sword, but even as the others warned him to stay back, the spirit of vengeance consumed Evan. In Evan's psyche, he heard the spirit of vengeance using Myrrh's voice to persuade him into accepting the power for himself, claiming that he could go from being the weakest of the heroes to surpassing even Freud himself. However, the real Myrrh was able to reach through to Evan, giving him the strength he needed to force the spirit of vengeance out of his body. Just then, the demon got up and explained that the spirit of vengeance was the combined spirits of all of the demons across millennia who had driven themselves to ruin in pursuit of the ultimate power, along with the countless innocents who had lost their lives to that greed. He moved forward to put an end to the spirit of vengeance, which told him that its link to Damien meant that destroying it would kill Damien as well. However, Damien told his brother to finish it, having come to his senses, and called his death atonement for everything that he had done. Mournfully, the demon destroyed the spirit of vengeance and took Damien's body away to bury it at their ruined home. Author's note: I've had some pretty interesting discussions with some people on our lore Discord about Evan choosing to accept the power of the Spirit of Darkness. Evan's entire character arc has been centered around filling the massive shoes of Freud, and he's developed a pretty strong inferiority complex as a result. I would have been very interested to see Evan go down the dark path here. Instead of feeling inferior, he just feels jaded and resentful towards everyone who dismissed him as a discount Freud. By choosing to accept the Spirit of Vengeance power and going down a dark path, Evan would essentially be deciding that he doesn't care about inheriting Freud's legacy, or what the other heroes think of him, as all that matters to him is destroying the Black Mage however he sees fit. Additionally, by going off on a completely different path as Freud, he'd be making it so that the heroes can't compare them anymore, because he's now taken an extreme measure to prove that he's his own person and not just that guy who kinda looks like Freud. With Damien's ambitions ended, Alicia's spirit emerged and congratulated the heroes for saving the world once again. However, when Evan asked how long it would take for the life force of Maple World to return, Alicia estimated that it would likely take 1,000 years. When they asked whether anything could be done to expedite it, she told them that with her physical body destroyed, her powers were tethered to the Transcendence Stone, which they could use to scatter her power across Maple World. Though Luminous worried that it meant that she would cease to exist, she reassured them that she would only be in a different place. She told the heroes that Damien had inflicted his misfortunes upon the Maple World in the most piteous? The most piteous? I don't know that word. Way. Oh, piteous. Is that how you fucking spell that? The most piteous way, and asked them to take care of the world so that the same misfortune wouldn't befall it again. With that, the heroes shattered the Transcendence Stone, allowing them to scatter Alicia's life force across Maple World, restoring vitality to the withered lands. Author's note: GMS did a bad job with its translation and kept the fate of the Transcendence Stone ambiguous, making me and a lot of people believe that it still existed somewhere. Because of that, I kept wondering why they didn't use the Transcendence Stone in order to destroy the Black Mage during Tenebris, although I later checked the original KMS storyline, which explicitly mentions that it had been destroyed. This blockbuster is basically over, and I'm still fairly unimpressed with it. Aside from all the other issues that I mentioned, the last major problem that I have with it is the way that the writers treated the demon army. Throughout the entire story, we've seen the theme of Damien being a product of his circumstances, with how his anger and his rage were created from being manipulated by Arcarium and by being forced into a life of slavery in Tynerum, just like the thousands of half-blood demons in his army. Even the spirit of vengeance was just the combined fury of all the demons and their victims who lost their lives over centuries of violence. The obvious message of this story, and a very large message of the overall game itself, is the idea of breaking the cycle of generational trauma that keeps echoing and bleeding into the present. This is a great theme that never once gets followed up on in a meaningful way, and a big reason of this is because the blockbuster was just so short. It's two entire acts shorter than Black Heaven, and the condensed runtime makes it impossible to explore everything. The writers created a great explanation for Damien's actions, except there's no resolution to any of it. After Damien dies, Alicia asks the heroes to take care of the world so that other people like Damien won't inflict their misfortune upon it. So, what exactly does the Alliance do for all these demons who are trying to escape their miserable lives in Tynerum? Send them back into slavery, of course, because why bother taking accountability for the fact that their ancestors were the ones who kicked the peaceful demons back to Tynerum centuries ago in the first place? Sometimes this game does a remarkable job with exploring themes and symbolism. Other times, it treats its characters and settings like they're a bubble that you can just pop once you're done with them. It's the same thing with subplots like Ariant. They're going out of their way several times to highlight just how much the people of Ariant are suffering, and they made it Irina's reason for joining the Cygnus Knights in the first place in the Ignition revamp. Sadly, you'll never see them actually do anything about it for this very reason. The writers will use it as a plot device until they don't feel like acknowledging that it exists anymore. Several days later, Neinhardt and the Cygnus Knights traveled to the sanctum of Abraxas in order to capture the last of the demon forces. To Neinhardt's surprise, Lilin arrived and explained that she had come to see the ruins. Neinhardt told her that he was glad that she wasn't hurt, though Lilin merely dismissed his words. She then asked if he regretted that day that he had left Rien to find the Empress, while she had remained behind to wait for the heroes. He told her that though he didn't regret his decision, he was wrong about one thing. He explained that he had initially believed that the heroes were merely legends, and that those who waited for them were afraid to take responsibility for their own lives. However, he told Lilin that he had come to realize that no matter how much time passed, it would always remain a fact that the world needed heroes. The two then gazed upon a new mural depicting the heroes saving the world tree. Meanwhile, Arcarium slithered back to headquarters, having transferred his life force to a snake form before Damien had destroyed his body. Upon seeing him, Hilla laughed and told him that things were going smoothly without him. Arcarium demanded to know if there was a plan that he was not aware of being put into motion, though Hilla merely asked if Arcarium had really thought that the Black Mage hadn't been aware of what he had been planning. She told him to consider his snake form as punishment for his jealousy before reporting to the Black Mage that his plan was continuing smoothly, and with the Transcendent of Time imperfectly split and the Transcendent of Life scattered across the world, they were ready for his next orders. The Black Mage then told them to allow the Alliance to enter the Gate of the Present, where he awaited them on the other side. Soon after, Arcarium slithered up the stairs to the Black Mage's throne, fuming at Hilla's declaration that he was being punished, rather than the Black Mage merely allowing him to rest. Gathering his powers, he transformed back to his human form and appeared before the Black Mage, who ordered Arcarium to bring Tana to him. Arcarium protested that Tana couldn't even control her own powers, but the Black Mage told him not to presume to judge what he couldn't understand. As he turned to leave, Arcarium seethed that he would not allow that stupid girl to go anywhere near the Black Mage, vowing to finish things for good. Author's note: this scene of Arcarium getting his new orders is shown after you defeat him in the Genesis Weapon Liberation questline. The rest of this section below comes from the Black Mage Origins webcomic that was commissioned by Nexon. Sometime later, Evan was helping his family harvest potatoes when he attempts to use magic to harvest the potatoes, resulting in them being set aflame. Evan realized that he needed to practice his magic in order to become strong enough to face the Black Mage. Luminous agreed to tutor Evan and began teaching him the complex theories behind magic. However, Evan, being unable to keep up, began wishing that he had been born with natural talent. However, Luminous warned him that overwhelming talent could corrupt a person. To demonstrate his claim, he took Evan to the ruins of the Aurora Great Temple in the Forest of Peace, and told him the origin of the Black Mage and how he had fallen to darkness. Evan asked Luminous what the point of even trying was if such a powerful mage could fall to ruin. Luminous reassured him that if humans could turn from brilliance to shadow, that even a regular child could attain greatness, pointing out how Evan had ascended from a simple farmhand to a dragon master. His faith renewed, Evan eagerly agreed to continue studying under Luminous in order to become stronger.